I've always hated my boss, but after the accident, everything changed. A demonic Empress took over her body. And now, I'm the only one who can help her.
On a rainy night, during an accident, a voice was heard. A young man wondered whether he should save his boss, although in truth, he didn't want to get involved in that situation. While trying to save her, he recalled everything she had done to him at work, and how much she had overburdened him in recent times. He settled her carefully on the ground, thinking he was acting out of mere compassion, and questioned whether he would accumulate any good virtue by doing so. He approached and performed mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on his boss. At that moment, a beam of light shot down from the sky and struck the girl lying on the ground. Nervously, only one thought ran through his mind. Who else would sign his expense reimbursement forms? On the other hand, he couldn't help but notice that his boss's lips were soft and sweet. At that instant, she woke up and asked if he was looking to lose his life. A system unlock message appeared, informing him that he had successfully unlocked the career shock system, because he had successfully shocked the Empress. After receiving a kick to the face, the young man wondered where that voice had come from, and who the Empress was. His boss grabbed him with her legs, flipped him over forcefully, and pinned him down, declaring that those who disrespected her would face divine punishment. Confused, he asked what that was supposed to mean, and suggested to Miss Lin that if she had suffered any head injury, they should go to the hospital. At that moment, she realized she could no longer use her true energy. The young man commented that she seemed fine, and suggested she go to the hospital by herself, adding that if she didn't, an ambulance would arrive shortly. While the boss stared at her hand in confusion, he mentioned that he still had to work overtime and needed to leave, asking her not to forget to help him with the reimbursement later. His boss, stunned, couldn't understand where she was or what had happened to her true energy. Sometime later, the young man appears relieved for having finished his work and for being able to enjoy his valuable and rare day off. Arriving home, he asks his brother if there is anything to eat. The boy replies that he left nothing, thinking his brother would stay at the office for another night. Smiling, the young man asks if the boss had squeezed the poor man dry once again. The boy then gets startled and drops his can of soda on the floor. The man, confused, asks what is happening. But suddenly the boss arrives at the scene, questioning whether this kind of cage could really be called a home. The employee asks his boss what she is doing there, and his brother jokes that he had brought a girl home without warning. Looking at the man, the woman asks him to explain everything to her, as she is very confused and wants to avoid a punishment for the offense he committed earlier. She then takes him by the hand and asks him to follow her for a moment. The younger brother thinks they are participating in some kind of realistic RPG, and believes his brother, Youwei, really knows how to have fun. Arriving at another place, Youwei tells the boss that, even though he is her subordinate, she cannot force him to work during his day off. The girl asks if he is supposed to be some kind of disciple of hers, and explains that she is an empress of the underworld sect. After 3,000 years of cultivation, she has finally managed to reach both the human and heavenly realms. She then asks what place this is, and why she cannot channel her energy. Observing the girl, Lu wonders if she has read too many novels and gone crazy. But he explains that there are some rumors about cultivators and martial artists existing in this world, although encountering them is extremely rare. He adds that both he and she would be considered normal people. At that moment, the woman grabs him by the neck and gets closer. Lu begins pleading to resolve things peacefully, without any physical contact. The girl, very close to our protagonist's face, says that he does not emit the aura of someone from the Righteous Alliance, and seems not to have been sent to capture her. Quickly, Youwei pulls away, asking what that was. At that moment, some men prepare an ambush against the two of them. The boss turns and shouts that she will punish the eavesdroppers. The men then come out of hiding, and one of them says he did not expect to be caught so easily. Upon seeing the man's hand filled with pulsating energy, Lu is impressed, thinking that he might be a real cultivator. He asks why he is being attacked. The man responds that our protagonist has seen too much and must be eliminated, and then charges toward Lu. Suddenly, a shield appears around Youwei, and a system message warns that this shield was activated because the host's life was in danger. the men are thrown far away, and one of the attackers asks if that was even possible. Lu, looking at his own hands, wonders about the voice that had reappeared and where that shield came from. The supposed Miss Lin observes the men and says she will teach her disciple something. Leaving enemies alive is the same as digging one's own grave. She lifts one of her feet and stomps hard on the ground, concluding by saying that to eliminate such ants, brute force alone would be enough. Watching the woman from a distance, Youwei starts to realize that all of this is real. He has truly awakened a shock system, and the person standing before him no longer seemed to be Miss Lin, but the true Empress. Some time later, while returning home, Lu read the messages his younger brother had sent, informing him that he would leave the house free and spend the night at a cyber cafe. The boy also asked how a not-so-beautiful girl could be interested in Youwei. Nervous, the protagonist asked himself the same question. He opened the door, invited her in, told her to make herself comfortable and sit wherever she wanted, but warned her not to mind the mess, as he hadn't had time to clean up. She sat down on a sofa and said she didn't mind. Trying to understand the current situation, Lu then asked if she had really crossed worlds and taken possession of his boss's body, Miss Lin Miyauki. The Empress replied that it was more or less like that and explained that during a tribulation, after her successful ascension, at the moment she was about to fight against the Righteous Alliance, she ended up falling into that body and losing her powers. Lu asked if those people from the Righteous Alliance were her enemies. The Empress answered that they were just a bunch of hypocritical idiots who thought themselves righteous, but if they wanted to fight, she would show them what a true massacre was. Feeling uncomfortable, Lu thought that, in this world, she would be considered a tyrannical leader. He offered her a drink and warned that this world had different rules and laws. He picked up the TV remote and suggested she see for herself. He began explaining that, in this world, there were things like magic, witchcraft, and advanced weaponry, and that reaching the skies or destroying meteors could be done with just a flick of a finger. Confused, she asked if such a strange path really existed. Lu confirmed it, and added that no matter how powerful someone's cultivation was, they could not resist such forces. Therefore, he asked her to avoid harming others, or there would be serious consequences. She stood up and commented that the energy in this world was so weak that she doubted there were any great masters around. Then she placed 2 fingers on his forehead and said that Lu's aptitude was among the best she had ever seen. Embarrassed, Lu wondered if his aptitude had been enhanced by the system. The Empress commented that if he had been in her world, he would reach the spirit refiner level within 300 years, and that was a pity. At that moment, Lu's cell phone started ringing. Sighing, he said it was just a worker wanting to get paid. When he checked the device, he saw it was his supervisor, who had sent him several messages demanding that he fix the bug immediately, threatening that if it wasn't done that night, he needn't bother coming to work anymore. Annoyed with the pressure, Lu remarked that the supervisor should be turned into an AI that didn't need rest. The Empress approached the window and said that working late into the night was no different from hard labor. Looking at the sky, she remembered that once she had seen the man responsible for bridge repairs mistreat the workers' wives and children, and because of that, she had cut him into pieces. Lu looked at her, confused, thinking how casually she talked about ending lives as if it were nothing. She continued explaining that this incident had been used by the Righteous Alliance as an excuse to attack her, but, confident, she said she didn't care, because those idiots would never be able to defeat her. The protagonist then thought that maybe she wasn't so bad after all. He asked her if her cell phone was still working, as such an item was very essential here. Curious, the Empress asked if the item was truly that magical, and began looking for it. She handed it to Lu, asking if that was what he meant. Lu thought it likely that, given the accident, the phone would be broken. But to his surprise, he realized that even with the car destroyed, the device had suffered no apparent damage. He took her hand and said he would show her how to use it. He brought her finger close to the screen and explained that this was how she could unlock the phone. Embarrassed by the situation, she called him a perverted disciple and said he deserved to receive divine punishment. Some time later, Lu had ordered some food. The Empress asked what it was, since it had a strong smell of spices. Showing the snack, Lu said that barbecue was the best option for the evening. He grabbed a skewer and offered another one to her, telling her to try it. As she put it in her mouth, she felt something new. She said it wasn't bad, but the sensation was as if a dragon were breathing fire into her mouth. She asked if they often ate that kind of food. Lu replied yes, and asked if there wasn't chili in her world. The Empress said there was, but it wasn't nearly as strong. Lu commented that there were indeed differences between their worlds, but that people there were used to eating like that. He then offered her a can of Coca-Cola, saying it was the best thing to go with the food, and that although it looked like poison, it tasted really good. She took a sip and spat out a bit, saying it gave her a tingling feeling on her tongue and a fizzy sensation in her stomach. Lu explained that it was very popular there, helped quench thirst, but that if you drank too much... Suddenly she burped. Laughing, he added that people who drank too much usually burped easily. Looking at the can, she said it actually tasted good, but really did seem like poison. Then she thought that, if she were drinking that in her palace, her disciples would freak out. She would tell them she was using that poison to temper her body, but that they shouldn't imitate her. Everyone would celebrate. Lost in those thoughts, she smiled. He asked if it was really good for her. Coming back to herself, she said she was just thinking about something. Lu offered to buy something else in case the chili was too strong. She held his arm and said she just wasn't used to it. Lu asked if she was sure because it could be really spicy. With a super spicy skewer in hand, she said she was the Empress, and shouldn't be afraid of a mere chili. She tried to eat it again, but couldn't handle it. He then offered her a bowl of noodles, and the Empress commented that it wasn't as spicy. Sometime later, she showed up clinging to a can of Coca-Cola, saying it had become her favorite thing. Watching from afar, he remarked that he had told her not to be so stubborn. At that moment, his phone started ringing. When he checked the messages, it was once again his supervisor, asking if he had fixed the bug, and saying that if the protagonist didn't resolve it that night, he'd report it to that damned boss in the morning. Looking at the message, the protagonist thought that man still wanted to be the boss's lapdog, even without knowing what had actually happened. Looking at the boss's body, he thought it didn't matter, as long as the person was there. The next day, at the company building, the Empress was fascinated by the elevator. Lu asked if she remembered that everyone called her Chief Lin. She said she did. When they arrived at the 18th floor, the elevator doors opened and a man walked up to her, saying she had been very cruel, since people had been worried about her, and she hadn't said a word all night. He leaned over her and said that at least she was safe, and asked her to hurry so she could enjoy the breakfast he had made for her. The Empress asked Lu Youwei who that man was, and he explained that it was Gu Xiaonan, one of her suitors. More precisely, the son of the building's owner. Pointing at Lu, Gu Xiaonan said he shouldn't be sharing the elevator with her. Waving his hand in front of his face, he complained that he couldn't stand the smell of poverty anymore. Completely ignoring the man, the Empress and Lu went to her office to check a document. At that moment, another man came running toward her. He pointed at the protagonist and asked her to fire him, because he hadn't finished what he needed to do the night before, since Lin hadn't fixed the bug, and he was always slandering the boss. Whispering in her ear, Lu told her that this was the man who had called during the night. Annoyed, the Empress said that so he was the one slandering her. Nervously, the man said he would never do such a thing, and that it was probably Lu Youwei twisting the truth. The Empress shouted that she and Lu had been together all night and asked if the man still had the nerve to lie. Everyone around was shocked by the information, creating tension in the room and leaving the protagonist desperate. But at that moment, a system message appeared, saying that he had awakened the shock system, and as a reward had received a set of ancient martial arts techniques. Entering the company's presidential office, Lu was sitting at the desk and said that fortunately, the computer password wasn't a problem for him. As soon as he accessed the documents, they would know where the boss lived. The Empress commented that, from what she had heard, this boss hadn't been very kind to him, which was why he was going through so much trouble to help her. The protagonist said he just wanted to help her, but deep down, he wanted to use the powers she had as the boss. He asked her to hurry and sign his reimbursement because he wanted to see that man get what he deserved. He added that he couldn't leave her alone, since some reporters might find her, and that would be like abandoning her to her death. Frightened, she thought the reporters were going to arrest her. Tasting the food on the boss's desk, Lu commented that it was delicious and asked if she didn't want to try some. Remembering the spicy food from the previous day, she refused to try it this time. Lu said this dish wasn't spicy. Sometime later, as they were leaving the presidential office, they found the liar carrying some buckets. Crying, he asked if that would be enough, since his back hurt a lot. The Empress turned to him and said she was being very kind for not punishing him with divine retribution, and that if he complained again, she would add 10 more hours. Gu asked her what kind of chaotic work Youwei had to be involved in. Whispering, he said the protagonist was clumsy and poor, and asked that his behavior not influence her. The Empress became irritated upon hearing that and turned to face him. The man said she had given him that look before, but now she seemed like a different person. Lu turned to him and thanked him for the delicious ham. Surprised, the man asked if the protagonist had even eaten what he had made for her breakfast. Lu walked away with the Empress and told the man they had some important matters to deal with. Once again freaking out, Gu asked what those private matters were. At that moment, Lu realized that, with that level of shock, the system wouldn't be activated. So he concluded he would have to try something different. Annoyed, Gu said Youwei had better be ready for the consequences. Arriving in front of a luxurious mansion, the protagonist is surprised to see that she already knows how to open the digital lock without him needing to explain it. She replies that it's only natural. They enter the house, and Lu says he will teach her how to use some of the items inside. He takes her to the kitchen and says he'll explain something later. She responds that it's not necessary, as she has never cooked before. Next, he shows her the bathroom and explains that she can bathe and also take care of her needs there. Alarmed, she asks if doing both things in the same place isn't bad. But he replies that it's fine. It's a toilet. And she just has to press a button for everything to go away. He shows her the shower and says it can be adjusted for hot water. Excited, she becomes eager to take a bath. She asks him to get her some clothes. Lu goes to the wardrobe and is shocked by what he finds there. He never imagined his boss would be like that. But fortunately, there were plenty of clothes, so he didn't have to worry about it. The Empress asks if everything is ready. She says he's too slow and that she's about to catch a cold. At that moment, the protagonist panics, as he has no idea how to teach her how to put on those clothes. Outside the bathroom, he says it's just a matter of following the picture and not wearing the same clothes as before. She replies that she understands and asks him to stop bothering her. After all, it was just underwear, and it shouldn't be that hard. But, on second thought, she finds the design very complicated, and then wonders if a string can even be considered clothing. Meanwhile, in the living room, the protagonist is watching TV. She walks in, and he invites her to watch a documentary about world history. She becomes interested, and he explains that the documentary talks about the evolution of life, industry, and energy. She sits next to him and, excited, says she'd love to watch it. However, 5 minutes later, she falls asleep. Looking at her, the protagonist comments that she said she was interested but fell asleep right away. He tries to cover her with a blanket, but she cuts it in two. Startled, he says he was just trying to cover her. He wonders if she's still asleep and tries once more to use a piece of the fabric to cover her. Again, she tears the cloth in half. Seeing this, the protagonist wonders if she's always alert, even while sleeping. So, he gives up and decides it's better to stay away from her. He opens the system and says he'll practice the ancient martial arts he just acquired. Sitting on the floor, he tries to channel his energy and cultivate the celestial Dao fist technique. After a while, he thinks the name sounds too pretentious, but as he practices a few moves, he feels pain throughout his entire body. His chest tightens so much that it feels like his heart is going to explode. The Empress approaches and says that if he continues practicing, he might end up dead. She explains that the better the technique, the riskier it can be. The protagonist may have talent, but his foundation is weak. Therefore, he won't be able to withstand the pressure that this technique puts on the body. In other words, she says he is still too weak. Embarrassed, Lu thanks her for telling him that. He asks if she really slept earlier, and she replies that yes, and now she's full of energy. At that moment, his phone rings. When he answers, he asks Manager Zheng what the problem is. The Empress watches him and Lu turns around, saying he's going back to work and will be home later. She asks if being by her side wouldn't spare him from such tedious tasks. He replies that with great power comes great responsibility, and that he needs to teach this to others. Otherwise, everything will become a mess later. He starts to leave the house, saying he doesn't want to make other people's lives worse. The Empress calls him back. He turns around and asks what she wants, and she tells him to come closer. Embarrassed, Lu stammers that maybe it's not appropriate. Suddenly, she hits him on the head. He asks if he offended her somehow, and she tells him to forget it and just go. Confused, he asks if she's sending him away, and she tells him to stop being silly and stay. As he leaves the house, he says he'll order food for her, and that she should just stay there and not scare people. At that moment, she remembers that she no longer has her energy, and can't send her consciousness remotely anymore. As night falls, the protagonist stretches and feels relieved for having finished his work. His co-worker, calling him President Lu, asks if he would treat them to a late-night snack. The protagonist questions the reason, and the man tells Lu to stop pretending. After all, he was with the president. Lu replies that the man is reading too much into things. He explains that she had an accident yesterday, but wasn't seriously injured, and since he was nearby, he simply helped her. The co-workers are shocked by the revelation and ask if it's true. The protagonist confirms, saying that if it weren't, why would he be there working overtime so late? As they talk, the young Gu watches them. A bit more confident now, he realizes it was all just a coincidence, but becomes irritated seeing the protagonist showing off in front of the woman he loves. He decides he'll make him pay for it. Meanwhile, in the president's luxurious mansion, the Empress is sitting in the dark at the table. She hears the protagonist arrive. He asks what's going on since the lights are off. She turns around and says she's very angry, and that the consequences will be serious. He places the food on the table and suggests she eat something first. She pauses for a moment, then starts devouring the food, saying he should have brought it earlier. Sometime later, satisfied, she asks why the food isn't spicy this time. Smiling, he replies that, in this case, the wontons are better when they're lighter. She grabs her phone and asks if he has something against her. She complains that she can't order food with just 2 taps and questions why she can't do it herself. The protagonist realizes this is what she was actually upset about. He sits beside her and says he'll take a look. He explains that she needs to scan her face to complete the payment and asks her to point the camera at her face, since that's the only way she can pay for the food. While cleaning the table, he wonders what those papers about meditation techniques are, and how his boss, Lin, could even read that kind of thing. The Empress replies that in fact, she was the one who wrote them. The protagonist is even more surprised, but she says it's not so strange since she still knows how to use paper and pen. She gets up and explains that it's a meditative breathing technique that will help him strengthen his body and focus his mind. She continues, saying that once his meridians are unblocked and his body reshaped, he'll be able to handle the technique he's been practicing. Embarrassed, he thinks that it's the first time a girl has done something like this for him. The Empress then says there's a condition. The protagonist jokingly replies that he's not going to sell his body for it. But she explains that if he accepted her methods, then he'll have to practice according to them. She doesn't care about his natural talent. She wants him to master the first chapter within 3 weeks, because she never keeps lazy people around. At that moment, the protagonist feels as if he has just seen a demon. He asks how long her disciples usually take to practice. She replies that it takes around 4 weeks, but since Lu is naturally more talented, 1 week less shouldn't be a problem. He then picks up the paper and begins to read. He needs to keep the energy flow light and circulating through his body. Meanwhile, she's sitting on the table, eating some cookies. She tells him to eat first, that there's no rush. But the protagonist says he feels his body has become much lighter. She is startled, realizing he might have mastered the entire chapter in just a few breaths. Youwei looks at his own hand and asks what he has just mastered. The Empress replies that he has mastered the fundamentals of body refinement. She asks him to take a deep breath and try again. The protagonist pauses for a moment and breathes. The Empress is astonished, realizing that what she's sensing is spiritual energy from a radius of dozens of kilometers being drawn toward him. Surprised, she wonders what kind of monstrous talent this could be. A system shock message appears, stating that he has once again surprised the Empress, and as a result, he has received a reward. Instant steps. Lu thinks that once again the system has appeared, and given him a reward for the shock he caused. He concludes that, for the system to appear again, he will have to shock someone even more. Seeing Lu laugh, the Empress asks why he is laughing like that. He replies that it's nothing. He's just thinking about the day he will become an incomparable master. Then, he turns to her and asks if she has any more instructions. Otherwise, he will go back to practicing. She says yes. There's something very important. She asks why there's no Coca-Cola in the house and why she can never find any food. This leaves the protagonist speechless. Sometime later, he's rummaging through her fridge and comments that if he has to teach her how to order things from the market this late at night, the delivery guy might have problems. He then hands her a can of soda, which she drinks immediately. She throws herself on the sofa and says she's feeling much better now. Then she tells Lu that she needs to remind him of something important. She asks him to be more practical, as she has seen many prodigies fall because they let power go to their heads. She warns him to always remember that there are always mountains above mountains. The protagonist simply agrees and says he understands. At that moment, the Empress slightly gets up and lets out a burp out of nowhere. Embarrassed, she says that this body is still very fragile, while hiccuping non-stop. The protagonist tells her he had warned her not to drink so fast, and declares that from now on she can only drink 2 cans per day. And he'll check on that. He also recommends that she brush her teeth before going to bed. She complains, saying he's really annoying, and asks if he wasn't leaving already. The protagonist says he's leaving, even if she gets mad at him, unless she wants to end up with diabetes and enough cavities to never drink soda again. Shocked, she asks if she won't be able to drink anymore, and he says he's just joking, then says he's leaving. After he's gone, she feels like she finally has a bit of peace. However, he shouts from the door, letting her know he saved his number in her phone. If she wants to call him, she just needs to tap the screen. At that moment, she thinks about how people once feared her wrath and did everything she asked. It had been a long time since someone cared about her that much. Arriving home, Lu wonders where his brother is, but he says he doesn't care and throws himself onto the couch, as he had a long day and needs to relax. He then picks up his phone and opens a game. He tries to see if his friends are online and sends a message in the chat, asking if they're playing anything. However, his friends start coming up with some lame excuses to leave the conversation at that moment. Lu gets upset with their attitude, but one of them asks if he's still in the city of Zhejiang. The protagonist gets excited and replies that it had been a long time since he'd seen that friend online, and the two end up planning to grab something to eat together the next day. Lu thinks, at that moment, that it's been 4 years, and he has never seen this friend in person. With that avatar, he could easily be mistaken for a gang leader. Meanwhile, elsewhere, in a surveillance room, a few men are searching for something. One of them says that one of his brothers disappeared there, and that there were no traces of his whereabouts. The other responds by telling him not to worry, as he found someone to deal with this guy. He says this while looking at a photo of our protagonist. The next morning, in front of a diner, the protagonist was sending a message to his friend, letting him know he had already arrived at the location. Lu wondered if the orders he had placed at the diner were ready, since his friend seemed a bit weak, and the food might help him regain some strength. As he thought about how his friend would appreciate the warm welcome, someone began approaching him. A young woman arrived and sat in the chair across from Lu, who told her that the seat was already reserved. However, upon seeing the girl, he commented that he had seen maids selling drinks in some places before, but didn't expect that kind of service there. Smiling, the girl replied that she was the old maniac, his friend from the chat. She showed him her phone and asked if she hadn't made a mistake too, right? The protagonist asked if she was really his friend, after all. In the game chat, her voice had sounded very different. The girl explained that one of her sisters had told her she should disguise herself as a man for safety, as she was very easy to manipulate when alone. That's why she used a voice modifier. She even mentioned that once she forgot to turn it on, but apparently no one noticed. Lu said that everyone had thought it was a woman the old maniac had brought home. Pouting, she asked him not to call her by that nickname, saying she didn't like it. It had been her sister who gave it to her. Then, she simply asked him to call her Xiao Tu, and informed him that she was moving to the city of Zhejiang. Some time passed, and they were walking around the city. Lu asked if she had come alone, and if she wasn't afraid that he might be a bad person. She replied that she had been training since childhood, and that even if 3 or 5 people came at her, no one would be able to get close. Lu commented that it felt kind of strange when a dear brother turns into a girl. Surprised, she asked if he was calling her cute. After banging the railing several times, Xiaotu said she felt a little embarrassed that he had said that out of nowhere. At that moment, the protagonist asked if she had heard something, because from all the banging, she had cracked the railing. Suddenly, the railing broke, and the protagonist almost fell into the lake. Xiaotu panicked and rushed to save him, pushing him backward, only to fall hard on top of him, leaving the protagonist completely sore. Some time had passed, and they were somewhere around there. Xiaotu apologized to Lu and said she always ended up breaking things here and there. He replied that it was okay, since he could handle it, and then told her not to worry. But deep down, he thought it was a good thing he had practiced the meditation technique. If it weren't for that, he wouldn't have a single bone left intact. Xiao's phone started ringing, notifying her that she had received a new request. Excited, she said her first order had arrived, leaving the protagonist confused. She then showed him the phone and asked if he didn't know the Xiaoshang app. The protagonist thought for a moment and replied that the app was quite popular at the moment and was used for people to post tasks to be completed by warriors and cultivators. He then remembered the day he ordered exotic lamb skewers. He continued, saying that after completing a task, the one who accepted it not only received the reward, but could also accumulate heroic points. Xiaotu agreed, and said that becoming the greatest heroine in the world was her biggest dream. Upon reading the task, it said that someone had stolen the employer's wife, and he wanted someone to deal with the guy. For a moment, the protagonist became furious at whoever had taken the employer's beloved. But upon looking closely, he realized the photo of the culprit looked a lot like himself. Without thinking twice, Xiaotu launched a strike toward the protagonist but ended up hitting a tree. Lu jumped back and asked her to calm down a little. After all, how could he do something like that? Besides, heroes like her should look for evidence first. Xiaotu told him to stop resisting, as this would be her first mission to become a great heroine. If he really was her friend, he should let her capture him. Then she lunged toward the protagonist, who responded by saying that others risk their lives for a friend, while she was trying to capture him just for the sake of a mission. She replied by asking him to become her heroic points, assuring him not to worry because she would take full responsibility. Once again, Lu dodged Xiaotu's attacks, making it clear that those evasions were not just coincidences. The protagonist, looking at her, remarked that dealing with a woman is very difficult, especially when she's trying to hit you. Then he decided he would no longer hold back. He jumped and quickly got behind her, using the Celestial Dao technique, bringing his hand dangerously close to the girl. Surprised, Xiaotu wondered if he had been playing dumb. At that moment, a message from the shock system appeared, stating that he had achieved a primary shock and had gained the soul shock technique. Shaken, Xiaotu opened up, saying that her grandfather had warned her that there might be some masters scattered throughout China, and that no matter how much she trained, she would never be able to match Lu Youwei. Trying to comfort her, the protagonist explained that he had also trained since childhood, but had only succeeded thanks to a sudden counterattack. Still suspicious, Xiaotu claimed that Lu's attacks didn't seem like those of someone who had been training since childhood. Then she said she would check. After all, someone who trained from a young age should have some visible marks. She told him to stand still so she could see. Desperate, the protagonist said he would tell her the truth. After some time explaining, Xiaotu is shocked to hear that the prodigious protagonist has only been practicing for 3 months, and says he is very talented. He comments that his skills and opportunities were somewhat special. Xiaotu replies that she understands, as cultivation would be a family secret, and she states that she won't interfere. However, she continues, saying that the fact he managed to achieve all of this in just 3 months is surprising. She thinks her grandfather would be impressed, and then says that one day she will introduce him to him. The protagonist then asks if she would help him find out who placed a bounty on his head. He then makes a vow that he would never do anything disloyal. She looks at a message on her phone and says she can't see exactly who it was, but she might be able to arrange a meeting. Sometime later, somewhere in the city, a few people step out of a van. One of them approaches and asks if she was the one who agreed to help with the task. Xiaotu points to the protagonist and says, they can do whatever they want with him. The protagonist, upon seeing that person, says he has never seen them before in his life. The person then thanks her and says he will definitely give her a 5-star review. The protagonist tells the man that they don't even know each other, so this must be a mistake. Staring at the protagonist, the man asks if he has already forgotten that he took his man and confided in him. Other people gather around the conversation, and then the man declares that today he will get his revenge on the protagonist. The two women who arrived with the group say they would love to do something to Lu because he is very handsome. At that moment, the protagonist tries to understand why these people are attacking him, whether it's just for mischief or if they are being manipulated by someone. Then he decides to test his new technique on them. He uses the soul shock technique, and then tells them to go back and do to the one who sent them what they intended to do to him. Xiao Tu asks if Lu is just going to let them go like that. The protagonist replies that it's no problem, and that he'll let them fly for a while. We'll continue in the next chapter. For more videos like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. See you next time.